A helicopter was transporting 2 crates of contraband when suddenly a shark burst out of the sea and bit into one of the crates. The helicopter instantly lost balance, and in the next second it crashed directly into a yacht on the water. Just a few days earlier, a group of people had driven a yacht out to sea. Their goal was to retrieve the crates floating on the surface. It turned out they were local smugglers, and inside the crates was the cargo for their next deal. But as they were about to reach the crates, several large sharks suddenly appeared on the surface, so the captain ordered his men to throw bait into the sea. The sharks were quickly distracted by the bait, and the people on board took the chance to start pulling up the crates. At that moment, an accident happened. Just when there was only 1 crate left, a shark suddenly shot out of the water, smashing the wooden box, causing the contraband inside to sink to the bottom of the sea. With 1 crate missing, the captain could not explain to his boss, so he ordered his men to dive and retrieve the goods from the crate. But now the sea was full of sharks. The men did not want to risk their lives. Unexpectedly, the captain pulled out a pistol and pointed it at them. Finally, he set his sights on a young girl. Helpless, she had no choice but to jump into the water as ordered, retrieving the goods one by one and putting them back onto the yacht. But the next second, she was dragged into the depths by a shark. Seeing this, the people on the yacht immediately opened fire on the sea, and this act enraged the sharks, which began ramming the yacht violently. 1 crew member accidentally fell into the water, and his fate was easy to imagine. Before the other 2 on the yacht could react, in the next second a shark leapt out of the water and snatched one of the crew members away. Now only the captain remained on the yacht, and he furiously fired into the sea without stopping. The scene shifted. Gia was preparing to take her yacht out to sea. Today was her 5th wedding anniversary with her husband Dalton, but Dalton could not be there. 5 years earlier, Dalton had died unexpectedly during a mission. This yacht was their best memory together. Because Gia had been deeply depressed since losing her husband, she planned on this special day to take the yacht out to sea to relax her mind. Meanwhile, crime boss Reverend learned that his cargo had not been delivered safely, so he immediately sent his subordinate Jareth to confirm. Soon, Jareth led his men out to sea, and through the tracker, they located the position of the delivery boat. Jareth noticed the tracker had no movement, and he had a bad feeling in his heart. At this time, Jareth noticed Gia's yacht. Her location was right near the tracker. Fearing trouble, he ordered his men to lower their guns, then went to the bridge and commanded the captain to keep a close eye on that yacht. Through the binoculars, the captain discovered it was just a woman fishing. After confirming there was only 1 person on board, Jareth relaxed slightly. They saw no sign of the delivery boat through the binoculars, only some wreckage. Jareth guessed it might have been ambushed by rivals, and the most important thing now was to recover the cargo. As Jareth was still considering how to retrieve the cargo that had sunk to the bottom, Teller said he had placed a tracker inside, which greatly reduced the time needed to find it. They quickly prepared their gear for diving. Teller attached trackers to each of them to easily confirm their positions. Once everything was ready, they swiftly dove into the sea, and using the tracker, they quickly found the wooden crate. 2 of them checked the crate's condition, while another picked up scattered goods. But just as he was putting the items into his bag one by one, a shark suddenly appeared before him and bit deep into his thigh. In no time, he was dragged into the dark depths. The other 2 quickly hid, but the shark kept circling nearby. At this moment, Batten saw a pool of blood spreading on the surface and spotted a shark swimming above, so he immediately grabbed his weapon and fired wildly into the sea. The gunfire immediately caught Gia's attention, and she quickly called her colleague for help. Seeing this, Teller quickly stopped Batten, fearing Gia might call the police if she saw, which would cause even bigger trouble. But the commotion still drew Gia closer, and learning that their friends had been attacked by sharks while diving, Gia immediately took out an electronic shark repellent and placed it into the water. When activated, the device made the sharks scatter. With the help of the shark repellent, Jareth and Charlotte quickly surfaced and finally made it back to the yacht. But with sharks everywhere in the sea, they dared not risk diving again. Jareth came up with an idea. He deliberately got close to Gia and asked to borrow her shark repellent. Unfortunately, the device's battery was running low. Gia could not be sure how long it would last. If it suddenly died in the middle, it would bring irreparable consequences. Moreover, Gia said she had been out long enough, and it was time to go back. Seeing his plan fail, Jareth pulled out a gun and aimed it at Gia, then ordered his men to search her yacht and identity. After some inspection, they discovered Gia was just an ordinary accountant. But what puzzled them was that in conversation she said she was married, yet they could not find any information about her husband. But the most important thing now was to retrieve the cargo, so Jareth ordered Batten to steer Gia's yacht slowly away from the area and told Gia to throw bait to distract the sharks. Soon, all the sharks were lured over. At this moment, Gia's phone suddenly rang. Batten immediately snatched it away, and when he heard the other side asking for an agent number, Batten realized Gia was a special agent, but by then, it was already too late. Gia launched an attack, and in less than 2.5 seconds, Batten was knocked down to the ground by her. She then pulled out handcuffs and restrained Batten. Shortly after Batten woke up, and Gia began to use her skills to paint a big picture for him. Unexpectedly, Batten fell for it, and was successfully persuaded to switch sides. Facing the siege of the sharks, the yacht had been smashed open with a hole, so they began working together to fight back against the sharks. But there were simply too many sharks, and as the yacht started to leak water, they had to find a way to swim over to Jareth's boat. Gia turned on the electronic shark repellent and quickly started swimming toward the other boat. However, Batten swam far too slowly, drifting out of the range of the electronic shark repellent, and was eventually dragged into the sea by a shark. At this time, Jareth and a crew member had already successfully dived to the seabed and started hauling up the crates one by one. Soon, 3 undamaged crates surfaced, and the others on the boat desperately pulled them back on board. Meanwhile, Gia was still swimming across the surface when suddenly the shark repellent's low battery shut it off. She could only speed up toward Jareth's boat. Meanwhile, Paulina on the yacht was pulling hard on the rope, but in the next second, Paulina was yanked into the sea, and a shark seized the moment to bite into her thigh. Just like that, they lost another crew member. They returned to the cabin to report to Reverend. After failing the mission multiple times, Reverend lost all patience with Jareth, so he gave Charlotte full command. Meanwhile, Gia had successfully climbed onto Jareth's yacht, hiding on the other side to secretly observe their every move. At this time, Charlotte and Jareth decided to dive again to retrieve the scattered goods, but sharks began ramming the yacht, and Jareth accidentally fell into the water. As the shark swam toward Jareth, Gia quickly jumped into the water and swam fast toward him. However, the shark turned away the moment it saw Gia. Soon they returned to the yacht, and Gia had once again saved Jareth's life. But Jareth showed no gratitude, instead asking why she had saved him. Gia told them,
"Because we need each other. I can help you survive. You have the only working boat, and you're down how many?"
Charlotte also wondered why sharks would not bite Gia, and Gia explained that usually one could push sharks away, or poke their eyes and gills, which would make them swim off. Jareth was puzzled. Since she was supposedly just an accountant, why did she know so much about sharks? But he did not want to dig deeper, because if they failed to retrieve the cargo, none of them on the boat would live to see tomorrow. Jareth, realizing Gia's knowledge about sharks, threatened her to dive and help them retrieve the goods, leaving her no choice but to dive into the sea. Soon, Gia retrieved the scattered goods, but at this moment, Jareth was preparing to silence her. Yet he underestimated Gia's ability. During their conversation, Gia seized the chance to snatch Jareth's pistol, and then revealed her true identity. Just then, a helicopter appeared in the distance. Gia thought it was her reinforcements, but it turned out Reverend himself had arrived, intending to use the helicopter to haul away the crates. Jareth hooked the crates to the helicopter's cable and then leapt up onto it. Reverend asked about the situation on the yacht, and when he learned Gia was an agent of the Narcotics Bureau, Reverend was furious. Jareth's repeated failures had disappointed him deeply, and even though Jareth had served him for 10 years, Reverend shot him without hesitation. He then ordered his men to leave at once, but in the next second, a shark shot out of the water and bit into the crate, causing the helicopter to lose balance. As the helicopter was about to crash into the yacht, Teller quickly pulled out a lifeboat, jumped into the sea, and climbed aboard. Reverend also chose to jump into the sea. On the yacht, both Charlotte and Gia decisively jumped off as well. Soon the two women climbed onto the lifeboat, and after a conversation, Gia discovered Charlotte was also a member of the narcotics unit. She had been undercover at Reverend's side for 2 years, and today, there had been a chance to capture all of the smugglers in one move, but Gia's sudden involvement had ruined their plan. Charlotte also learns from Gia that Dalton was her husband. It turned out that during a mission, Dalton's undercover identity was exposed by Reverend, and he was brutally killed by Reverend. They decided to put on an act. At that time, Reverend was swimming toward their lifeboat, and with Charlotte's help, he managed to climb aboard. When Reverend learned Gia's husband had once been his lieutenant, he grew excited and began recounting in detail how he had discovered Dalton's undercover identity and how he had cruelly killed him step by step. Gia was completely enraged by Reverend's words. She lunged forward and grabbed his throat, then forced his arm into the water. In the next second, a shark swam over. Finally, reinforcements arrived, and the most powerful crime boss, Reverend, was brought to justice. That was the full story of the 2025 American horror movie, Great White Waters. The film is the latest work directed by Anthony C. Ferrante, and although it constantly tries to weave plot twists into the story, it still lacks innovation. Alright, that concludes today's video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.